Hi. Last episode we worked on Louie's nose. Today we're going to work on the side of his face and his mouth. So in order, you're going to see his whole face come to life. I'm sure he's at home right now watching this and he's amused. Oddly enough, he really is watching himself. I would not doubt it. So we are putting in some highlights in his muzzle. I'm going to start with a light gray. What I did is I took Payne's gray and I mixed it with a little burnt sienna and white, and probably a little bit of tan. I'm going to go into a lighter grouping of paint. Notice I made 2 or 3 different groupings. Don't be fooled into thinking you get away with just having one assortment and go from one assortment. Make a combination. It's to your advantage. So here we go. We're going to put more grouping in his upper area. Blend these down. This brush I'm using is a pointer brush, but what I'm trying to do also is I'm establishing a series of hair. That's something most people don't understand, but if you do one long hair, like I'm doing now, and you develop one follicle and have it drop down. Unfortunately, this follicle is not obeying me. You could do that. You could actually have a series of hairs, or you could develop a pattern where one is dark, one is light. That's fun. That's what I'm going to do. I think what I want to do is have 1 or 2 be brownish, light. And one thing about Louie, his hair comes in different groupings. He's the strangest dog I've ever seen. He has dark groupings of hair, light. And what I want to do with that is establish that pattern right in front of you. All right. So if you watch, you'll see what I'm doing. One hair goes into his mouth. Some of the hair just manages to pop over his mouth. I'm going to develop a couple of dark ones. I'm going to go with some really light hairs. I'm never going to use just plain white, though. I find that to be a little bit too boring. What I'm going to do instead is have a little paint on my brush, and I'm going to blend it in with white. So what I have is a very light grouping, and that's what we're going to do. Go over the mouth. That way you have hairs going over the side of the mouth, which is really cool. Let's see. I really should be using a longer brush, but I'll go with this. It's going to be okay. It's one of those things where you don't want to have something too wild, but you do. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to establish a pattern. I'll go with lights. I'll go with darks. I kind of like the idea of having some of the hairs go over the mouth. That's a cool little established pattern. I'm also going to go with a couple of dark strands. That's also cool. It's not going to be all white hair. Sometimes some dark ones are going to be behind the established pattern. That's a nice effect. So you establish a pattern, and then you break it. The funny thing about nature and animals, it looks like their hair is perfect. In essence, it is. You know, a lot of people take their dogs to groomers, but it's funny how a dog will look natural. Most things in nature, you know, your average deer doesn't go to a groomer, yet they look so perfect. I call it just, it's the way nature is. You get situations where things just fall into place. Organized chaos. That's what nature is. It's full of organized chaos. And yet it looks so perfect. Some wild animals, you see photographs of lions. They don't go to a groomer, yet they look so perfect. It's a strange thing about nature. There are exceptions. Some animals, your average wildebeest doesn't look too presentable, no matter how you. But there are some animals which define logic. Okay. Let's try the other side. Same thing. We're going to have a couple of strands of hair go over the mouth. I did the mouth, I kind of did a line there. And it looks like he's grimacing. Louis, when he's pondering something, will have that look. He's an interesting fellow. You'd swear he's thinking about stuff. And he often confuses me because I think he's in deep thought, and then he'll turn around and scratch his hiney. So obviously he wasn't thinking about much other than an itch. So he fools you. Or maybe he was. One never knows. He's a cutie though, and you got to forgive him. Now, let's try the other side. The other side is interesting because you have hair forming a pattern against existing hair. And it forms a pattern. And it's very difficult to assimilate that pattern, but it's there, you can't deny it. So here we go. Let's start with a brown. And it's very hard to do in acrylic because, number one, acrylic dries almost immediately. And it's very hard to blend acrylic. So you run two things here. You're running into trying to get an identity established with hair. You're still trying to blend some existing stuff. I'm trying to do really fine follicles, which is going to drive me crazy. You have little bits of brown. I'm going to tell you one thing though. Louis will appreciate this. He'll look at this on a TV screen and he'll know that's him. It's amazing. Most dogs cannot look at a TV screen and get much out of it. He watches his favorite programs. If he sees a dog on TV, he'll start barking, expecting the dog to understand him. I don't know whether he's clever or I'm stupid. I don't know. He's probably just having fun with me. Okay. Now we go to a lighter shade. We've established a pattern. Actually, I'm going to go back to what I just did and put more on this far side. If you go with this, you could draw light hairs going over it. I'm telling you, he's beginning to develop a demeanor. What I want to do the next couple episodes, I'm thinking about the background color, and I'm actually going to have it making a glowy, kind of metallic glow. And you laugh, you say, how could that be plausible? It's going to make him pop out, because the background's going to look like it's glowing, and he's not going to be. He's going to have just this normal look. The opposite works sometimes to that effect. We'll see. I might be totally wrong. I've done this before and it does work. I've did it with faces. I've never did it with an animal before, so I could be totally wrong. But I have high high hopes for this. Now, let's go with a secondary brown. Not as intense. We're going to make it go into this. We're going to take a darker one. If you look at the photograph, you could see that there's a little curl in some of his facial hairs. I'm going to try to establish that with paint. It's hard to do. A photograph is easy. You just point a camera and click. Try to paint that same image, translate it into color. Not so easy. I could do it. I've done this for a few months, so I know how to do it. Okay, let's take a little burnt umber and Payne's Gray, because I want a little dark edge to this particular grouping. That's good enough. Next, we'll take white, mix it in with what I have. Remember I did this before. I mixed white in with some brown. And I'm going to try to do the same thing. Perfect. What I'm doing now is putting white over some of those brown straps. And it looks like hair. Hopefully. At least I might be fooling myself into believing that. Same thing on top. I think what I want to do is just have a little bit of dark coming out of that area. So we're going to establish just a bit of shade here. A little bit darker maybe. A little bit darker. We'll take the brown with the Payne's Gray and have a little shadow underneath the nose. There we go. What I'm trying to do is establish like a secondary source of light. Where the nose is, I want to show the shadow as well as a bit of light reflecting off the nose. I'm going to make it even darker. I don't use black, so it's kind of tough. I don't like using black. I find it to be too strong. Let's go back into the Payne's Gray and just get a nice dark group of Payne's Gray. Here we go. Perfect. Now, want a little bit of gray coming out of there, but I'm going to mix it with just a touch of brown. And we're going to go in the same way. We're going to try to make little hairs of this. This is not as easy as it looks. Because what I'm doing is I'm doing a Mother Nature bit. I'm trying to emulate what hair looks like. And as easy it looks, it's not that easy. Perfect. I'm happy with that. We're going to put a little bit of hair here. Sometimes a brush really helps you. Sometimes it does not want to know you're alive. Does not want to help you in the least. But this time it's working nicely. Not bad. We're going to put a little bit of hair up here. Same thing. This brush is working nicely today, so we'll put a couple more strands here. And we have the top done. Good enough. Let's now work on the bottom. The bottom is interesting. He's got a very white little thing right underneath his lip. It's an amazing feature on him because I'm going to put a little host of white right where his lip is. Have it protrude. We're going to put a little gray in there too to act like a shadow effect. And then we're going to go right into the hair effect. We're going to do the same thing in that we're going to do strands. Slowly but surely, we're going to try to do a couple more strands. I want that part of his lip to protrude. There we go. Now, strands. I'm not going to use white. I'm going to use an assemblage of the brown with the Payne's gray and white. I'm going to have 2 or 3 different groupings. Let's start with one. See how it looks. Again, I'm going to do little hairs. 1. Not bad. Let's try a different grouping. This is not easy, but once in a while it'll pop out nicely. Let's go with another dark one. Sometimes you really have to establish a pattern, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take one group, make one line, just to show people these are hairs. It's coming out. I'll do a couple of these just so we have them in reference. This brush is being real nice to me tonight. Very rare. Usually when you're doing something in front of the camera, the brush is going to say the hell with you. But today it's doing very nicely for me. It's working out nicely. Now, having established that pattern, I'm going to do a couple more. I'm also going to put a nice dark area underneath. Watch, I'm going to take this. All this is being done with the same brush. I'm not jumping back and using 2 different brushes. I'm establishing a nice dark thing here. Let's make it darker, and we'll put a little brown in there. So what you have is a dark, not overly dark, but it's Payne's gray and burnt umber with a lot of white. And I want to show hair, so I'm going to have it breaking into little follicles. It's not going to be cute, but it's going to look like hair, which is what I want. We're also going to go into this and do a couple doing the same thing in the same manner. Let's make it a little bit darker. Here we go. The next episode, I'm going to actually put in the bottom of his torso. And in the future, the next couple of episodes, we're going to do the background. That's going to be fun because you're going to see how important it is to establish a background. But I think the most important thing right now is just to get him solid. And that's what we're going to do. This one's going to be a short series. It's not going to be long because, honestly, doing a dog is not the same as doing a building or let's say, a model. You got to be so involved with so many details. A dog, I hate to say this, Louis, if you're listening, I'm sorry. You're just simply not as difficult. There are so little things I have to worry about. I'm not going to hurt his feelings. He's not going to be mad at me. And actually, there's so much more that's easy to capture. The lighting on a dog I take my own photographs. I take my own photographs for the girls I make paintings with too. But I find that there's so much more to it. I almost enjoy it more. I'm not saying I don't enjoy painting Louis. It's just that it's not as complicated, not to my way of thinking. Okay, looks pretty good. I actually enjoy doing it. It's a nice break. It's a lot easier to do an animal. And you know, if you do a photograph yourself and you get to know the dog a little and you capture a little bit of his personality, that is a good painting. When I do a portrait of any of the people I do, I try to spend a little time. I try to capture their essence. It's not enough to just get their likeness. That's easy. But I think I'm doing a pretty good job with Louis. I got his his aura. He's a little devil. He's a handful. And I got that little something in his demeanor. Okay, let's do the bottom. He's a thinker. My neighbor's got a dog who's 3 times his size. And last week, he ran up to her. And remember, Louis is a small dog. What does he do? He runs up to her. He's not afraid of her. Most dogs would be a little bit in fear of their life because this dog is large. He walks up to her, and I swear to you, I'm not exaggerating, he embraced her. He put his paws around her neck, and it looked like he drew himself close to her, and it looked like he hugged her. I've never seen that in my life. I've never seen a dog embrace another dog. I was dumbfounded. So was the owner of the dog. We were both looking and saying, Mike, have you ever seen anything like that in your life? Nope. He embraced. Well, it's amazing. He's a devil. I think the poor dog was a little confused too. Well, the dog's name is Sadie, and she was probably, I don't know. He's always walking by looking at her in the window, so maybe he just was so happy to finally meet her. Even if she is like 3 feet taller than him. It was quite the sight seeing this poor little dog standing on tippy toe, embracing this big dog. All right, I think the lower jaw is looking pretty nice. I think it's coming out real nice. Now, what I could do, what I'll probably do on my own, is play around with some of the hairs. And I don't want to make a big issue of it, but I'm going to probably be more persnickety with some of the hairs on the bottom. I got a feeling that this is coming out pretty good. The nose is beautiful. I did a good job on the nose. And I'm not really fond of doing cutesy dogs. And Louis is the rare exception. He's cutesy, and yet there's something about him. You could see his demeanor. His personality comes through every time. I'll do any dog if I see a personality. If he's just lifeless, then sorry. Like I said, if I get to meet the dog, I'll be glad to do a good portrait. But I have to know them. I'm the same way with people. I mean, I do a lot of freelance jobs, and it's hit or miss sometimes. If you have the opportunity to meet the client and you really get to know them, I do 90% of the time my work is great. But if it's just capturing a likeness, that's kind of boring. And I hate to tell you this, it's not going to look great. It's going to be hit or miss. I'm much better off taking my own photographs and having the opportunity to meet the people and really, really do a job. I believe in, I don't like these people who say that they capture the dog without ever having met them, or they capture the model without ever having, I doubt that highly. For one thing, I don't hire models. I'd rather draw normal, everyday people. I get a kick out of that. And I love making somebody who doesn't think they're special. I like making them look extraordinary. That is fun. Yeah, he's looking pretty good, fella. Oh, we're going to put a couple of hairs here. These are on the far side. Now the next step I'm going to do is hindquarters. And that's going to look pretty good too. Wow. And the very last thing I'll do is put in little shades of color, little twinks of color. Like I said, when he walks into a room, whatever the color of the room is, his hair picks it up immediately. It's kind of funny to see. It's going to be really hard to actually paint him. I'm not going to make it overt. It's going to be very subtle. Well, like I said, the next couple episodes we're going to dwell on his lower legs. It's not going to be as difficult because he's just a mass of hair. So it really shouldn't be that difficult. I got the hard part I got already. His face is, with Louis, his face is 99% of the battle. And I got his face without a doubt. I'm going to take a lot of time and dwell on some of the other characteristics like detail. When I work live like this, it's kind of hard to get into detail. I will, but on my own, before I actually finish it. I'll spend a little time on my own, honing down little bits and pieces of his demeanor. For no one but me. For one thing, this is a painting of pleasure. I'm not doing this for my daughter and for Louis.